Fill everybody in there. There's a sign-in sheet in the back for anybody who didn't sign in. We'd like to get an email list going so I can have a Vero Beach and Point Shirley email list so we can get information out as new information becomes available. So if you don't mind filling that out so we can create that list. We've also got some handouts there, a timeline, and also a beach management summary where we're at now with the plan. My name's Tony Marino. For anybody that doesn't know, I'm the town manager.
We can hear it here, right?
What's that?
No, we're good.
Okay, good. So Hannah Belcher, your council members here as well. We got Steve Caller in the front, DPW director. Other council members, Stan Swopes here. This is Dwight Dunk from Epsilon Associates, who we hired to generate the beach management plan over at the DEP. And then Kim Dimes, our Conservation Commission chair. So I wanted to just, the layout for today is I'm just going to quickly go through the timeline, kind of give everybody an update on where we stand. I'm going to pass it over to Kim. Kim's actually had a couple of meetings with DEP on site, and she's going to go over some of the conservation stuff. And then lastly, we're going to wrap up with Dwight, and he's going to go over where we're at with the beach management plan and where we stand with DEP. So back in, I'll give a quick update. So the notice of intent and the work that we were doing on Euro Beach for years, that was sent to expire back in 2022. So a notice of intent was filed in February of 2022 to redo it. We had Fisheries and Wildlife and a few other people make comments on that plan after it was filed. They wanted some stuff with regard to the nesting and the plovers. DPW Director Caller had responded to Fisheries and Wildlife that the concerns were being met. This was in April of 2022. So in May of 2022, the Winthrop Conservation Commission issued an order of conditions regarding the berm at Euro Beach and the beach management plan and work that was supposed to happen out there. At that point, the Department of Environmental Protection, DEP, appealed that decision and issued a cease and desist. This was in May of 2022. So they sent out a notice of a site visit. They were coming out in May and a superseding order of conditions. So we submitted the beach management plan to DEP at the time. Back in June of that year in 2022, they again rejected the beach management plan. We got a notice, now it said 10/20, that was the date on the letter, but in reality we didn't get it till November. November of 2022, Steve and I received a notice from DEP, ordering us to stop. Well, by that point, we had been doing the berm for years. Steve was already 3/4 of the way through. So we just finished the berm, and everybody knows the berm went up in before the winter of 2023, fall of 2022, winter of 2023. At that point, we did it, we took the berm down. So in March, we got a letter from the Attorney General's office. So DEP calls the Attorney General's office. They're not happy that we put the berm up. They want to get the AG's office involved to try to get us to comply. So we received that about working Euro Beach. Now, we had done ongoing meetings with them. And one thing I did want to correct, I got a notice of what you guys passed out at your meeting a week or so ago. We had been in constant contact with DEP and the Attorney General's office. There was no us ignoring them or anything like that. That didn't happen. So we were having meetings with them, Zoom meetings at first. They weren't happy with what we did, and what they want to put in place, and they still want to put in place, is what's called an administrative consent order. Now, part of that order, and the issue I have with it, is there's a fine built into that. They came up with this random and I think arbitrary number of $117,000. If we don't do what we say we're going to do, they're going to fine us. Now, in reality, they never fined anybody, but I didn't want the fine in there. So we've been pushing back on the fine, telling them, no, we'll do the work, we'll make the corrections, we'll do what you're asking us to do, but we're not going to, agree to the fine. That's where that stands today. We're still are getting there, but we're not there yet. But in the meantime, we're following what was in the administrative consent order with regard to the work we needed to do in the beach management plan and hiring an environmental scientist, which we did with Mr. Dwight Dunk and Epsilon Associates. So in September of 2023, Epsilon was hired. Again, later in September, Epsilon comes out, does a site visit, sees the beach, gets ready to do the work. They prepared a memorandum addressing the DEP issues, sent that into DEP back in January of 2024. DEP has since, after we sent in the draft of the plan, DEP has responded with comments. They didn't like some of the stuff we did. They were pushing back a little. So we met, and then we are pushing back a little bit more, just saying, okay, we agree what you said, but we want to keep these things in, and we have sent in, as was required in the original date, By 5/31, we were supposed to have a draft plan sent in to DEP, we met that. We sent in the draft plan, encapsulating some of the changes that DEP wanted, but not all of them. And Dwight will go into the beach management plan and what we're proposing in a little bit. So currently, with regard to the beach, we're waiting for DEP's response, which I assume we'll get in a few weeks. Leading up to this meeting, because I wanted to give you guys a plan of what we wanted to do on the beach. So understanding that, we don't have the beach management plan in place, we want to propose, and Steve and I have talked about it, we walked the beach early this week, is go out, bring the front end loader, bring it out like you do on a golf course, right? Go straight out, straight back, kind of take it along the edge of the beach so we can load in seaweed by hand into the bucket, and any large debris that's on there. We noticed a few logs and some other stuff out there, and get that off the beach and then bring it back out. I think we can do that without disturbing anything and without doing any raking until we have the plan in place. So that's our plan, and that's what we're proposing to DEP, but I have not heard back yet that they're okay with that. Hopefully I'll hear from them this week. With regard to the plovers, they've been around since 2008. When I was on the South Shore, we dealt with them down there. Revere deals with them, Nahant, everybody else deals with them. Everybody saw that maybe the two maps, they're on the north side of the beach and they're on the south side of the beach. The good news is on the south side of the beach, the eggs have already hatched and the chicks are out. So by July 4th, the chicks should be gone, and then we'll be able to pull that fencing down before the 4th of July. The ones on the north side, the eggs are there, but they haven't hatched yet, so that'll be a little longer, but that's a little less, out of the recreational area, so that shouldn't disturb too many people. But once they're done and finished up there, we'll pull that fencing out as well. So that's all I have. So at this point, I'm going to pass it over to Kim Dimes to give her update. And Kim had a meeting with, there's two gentlemen involved from DEP. One is Tyler Ferrick. He's sort of the local field rep. We've met on the beach with him a few times. And then Eric Warall is the director of the Northeast Division of DEP. We've met with them in their office in Woburn and out on site as well. But Kim had a meeting with Tyler on the beach, so I'll let her give an update.
Hello everybody, I'm Kim Dimes, Chairperson with the Conservation Commission. For anyone who doesn't know me, which I think quite a few don't, I'm a native Woburn person. My grandmother lived at 140 Taft Avenue, so I grew up down here. I remember, speak louder, Jack, okay. I remember the tall ships in 1976, I remember the blizzard of 78, I remember walking from 140 Taft Avenue down to Euro Beach, over the cobble, over the dunes to go swimming. It was a challenge, it was nourished beach. Then I remember, fast forward, I moved out to the state of Washington, and I remember coming back with my daughter to visit my grandparents, going to Euro Beach swimming, specifically in 2005, 6, 7. Also, going out there, lots of beach nourishment. Today, the beach doesn't look the same to me, and one of the reasons why is we have displaced the dunes, the primary coastal dune. To stem from there, I just want to let you know that the Conservation Commission, our jurisdiction is to conduct a public review and a decision-making process for the Wetlands Protection Act of the state of Massachusetts, which is Chapter 131, Section 40. And I was not involved in the Conservation Commission prior to 11/2022, so I don't know what happened, and I'm almost thankful that I don't know what happened, because moving forward, I just want to provide the information that is true and is the law and what we have to abide by, so that everyone understands that we are on a Barrier Beach down here, which it has a primary coastal dune, and that primary frontal dune has in a velocity flood zone, has the most protection out of anything in the state of Massachusetts. And if anyone has been to the Cape Cod and has seen the protected dunes down there, can understand that it's the storm protection, it's our barrier, and we can't move it. So I haven't looked at the beach management plan that we're going to hear about, but I know that I did meet with the state on another matter on Taft Avenue, and I went out I asked him to come out on the beach with me and walk the beach with me and talk to me. And this is Tyler Ferrick that Tony Marino was speaking of. And he stated, we looked at the profile line, I can see his concerns, the state's concerns, and understand that dragging the primary coastal dune up towards what we think we're protecting, all we do is invite the stormwater all the way up to it. You leave those dunes in place, and you have protection, that water stops there, has the ability to grab the sediment, and flow back out, bam, we're good. We drag all that closer to us, we think we're protecting us, but what we're doing is we're inviting all that stormwater all the way up to that dune now. So what seems to look like it's protection actually has defeated the purpose. And if you look at the handout that I provided, the stormwater, which is published by the Coastal Zone Management, it's the primary bundle dune, explains how it functions and the vegetation, the habitat, and the storm prevention and protection. And so I urge you to look at that. I urge you to go to the CZM website. There are stormwater smart sheets for homeowners that are amazing. The publications are so informative, and it really helps you understand who, what, when, where, and why. What you can do as homeowners to protect yourselves, vegetation on the dune, importing material, creating your own dunes, creating your own vegetation. And as far as the rumors on social media, which I'm not privy to because I don't go on there and read them, I want to extinguish anything that you might have heard about it being a runway. I heard hiking clover, natural habitat, the beach is closed. That's not true at all. And you know, it would be more concerning to me if we didn't have life out there. I mean, we all should be happy to be birds wanting to hang out on our beach. That means it's healthy, it's thriving, and it's important. It's part of the ecosystem. And I hope everybody understands that. But I think that going forward, we all need to work together to protect Point Shirley. And it's going to take every single one of us. Not one person, not the town, it's everybody has to be responsible for it. And I urge you to go into the regulations and read them. In very plain layman's terms, the CZM really provides homeowner stormwater sheets that are amazing and extremely informative.
Kim, I just want to add one thing.
Yes.
When I met with Tyler, I tried to explain to him, we never.
Yeah.
Steve Keller, everybody.
Yeah.
So the berm was always created by digging out the wall. The sand that had been up against the wall was the ramp, and those waves, you know, would go right up and over it. The way we created that berm since 2007, since I've been doing this, has been to dig out the wall and move it back 60 yards and create the berm. We've never brought sand up from the tidal. So, and I tried to explain that.
Thank you for clarifying that, because, and I wasn't here. I lived in the state of Washington, I wasn't even here when we were in the dune, so I can't say I witnessed it or didn't I witness it, but thank you for that, Steve, appreciate it. Yeah.
All right, thanks, Kim. And I'm going to introduce Dwight Dunn from Epsilon Associates. He's going to go over the beach management plan summary and where we stand with that.
Hi, everybody. If you don't mind, I'm going to sit down. I had some work on my knee the other day, so if you don't mind, I'll sit down. Just wanted to stand up and say hello. Yes, as Tony mentioned, the town hired my firm, Epsilon Associates, to help with the beach management plan after receiving the notice from DEP. And the first thing we did was provide a interim plan, which was for this past winter, which didn't get implemented. The next step was the updated beach management plan. The draft was submitted. We've received comments. And when we developed the beach management plan, we're trying to balance several interests of the beach and of the public. As Kim was saying, the Wetlands Protection Act, it has 8 interests that it protects. And the relevant interests here on Euro Beach are storm damage prevention, flood control, and wildlife habitat. And wildlife habitat is the shorebird nesting habitat. Also, because we have state protected species on the beach is also protected by the Massachusetts Endangered Species Act. So that means activities that occur on the beach should not be activities that will cause a take. And a take includes harassment, killing, harming the protected species. So we try to develop a plan that balances those interests as well as the general public interest of recreation, which isn't a protected interest of the Wetlands Protection Act, but obviously it's a public beach that's used for recreation. So we want to make sure that that interest is protected as well. So we're trying to balance all of those items. When it comes to beach and dune, coastal beach, coastal dune, the regulations, which we call the performance standards, which are the standards that need to be met for any work that occurs on a beach or a dune. Without getting into all the details, the big things are not to change the volume of sediment on the beach, not to change the form of the beach. The beach will change naturally on its own with, winter beach, summer beach, after storms, things like that, but to not artificially change the form of the beach. And not to do things that would prevent the dune from migrating landward, seaward, or along the beach. As we all know, Euro Beach, this peninsula, it's a barrier beach, which is itself a protected resource area that's comprised of beaches and dunes. But the barrier beach has been altered, the seawall being installed, constructed in the 1950s, I understand. Obviously the roads, the utilities, the houses. So the barrier beach, as a barrier beach geologic landform, really doesn't function the way that it naturally would because of these man-made features. In a pristine barrier beach over geologic time will migrate from the sea landward, because as the waves come in and they move the sediment and they carry the sediment over the dunes into the back side of the barrier beach, into the harbor or pond or river, whatever's behind it. I'm just talking generically right now. That means that over geologic time, that barrier beach moves landward. Doing some work up in Salisbury Beach, you've probably all heard about what's happening up there. And out underneath the beach with some of the erosion is actually the peat from when that used to be the backside of the barrier. It used to be hundreds of yards seaward from where it is now. But that process cannot happen here anymore. And with the construction of the seawall and the interruption of that natural movement, generally the beaches become coarser. They capture the seawall, the landforms capture the cobble, the rock, the gravel, so it causes the beaches to generally become rockier over time. So that's just some background of kind of where some of the thinking that goes into us developing the beach management plan. So the key elements of what we're proposing after getting the comments from DEP is, and I've highlighted them into the main issues, the recreation beach management, which really is not a Wetlands Protection Act interest, but it's an interest of the towns and of the public. So, we want to maintain it as a safe environment for people to hang out at, go to the beach, surf, walk, go swimming. So, removing the large storm debris in the spring in installing the signage for the shorebirds, just to make everyone aware that habitat is out there. And then during the summer, doing some beach raking, again, to remove debris, to make sure that it's a safe environment to be walking around barefoot. Cleaning and clearing the walkways, the entranceways and stairs so that it's accessible to the public. Landscaping the areas, on the landward side of the seawall, trash and, recycle collection and removal, and then in the porta potties. So basically, maintaining it as a public beach for people to use and enjoy. The next element of the shorebird nesting habitat management is an area where there's some conflict between the Wetlands Protection Act and the performance standards for beach and dune in the Massachusetts Endangered Species Act. The plovers and terns like disturbed habitat or open habitat so that they can see predators when they're nesting. They can, just think of it, like any animals that are prey, they worry about predators. They want to be able to see and have openings to clear so when they nest and they're incubating the eggs, they can understand their environment and be protective of their eggs. So open environments, in a natural setting, those open environments are maintained by the winter storms that come in and wash out sediment, that wash in sediment, that wash away some of the vegetation, that keep the areas open. In an urban beach like Euro Beach, and it's somewhat protected, with shallow waters offshore, just the landforms. Without any management, the dunes would become vegetated, and with that vegetation, that's where the predators hang out, and that means the birds, it's not open, so the birds would be less likely to nest. So what the town has been doing historically was doing some active vegetation management of backblading the dunes, just to kind of expose some of this, move the sediment around a little bit to expose some more of the sand, but also to keep the above-grade vegetation down during the growing season. And then, you know, the other items are, you know, monitoring the fencing, and, you know, just to make sure that the nesting is happening and monitoring it and then reporting it. But it's the vegetation management on the dunes, on the beach, that is in conflict between the Wetlands Protection Act that wants the beach to be left on its own, to allow it to change its form, its vegetation, its shape, its volume through natural processes and not be affecting that through human intervention. But on a beach like this, if there's no human intervention, it's likely to lose the characteristics that support shorebird nesting. So there's a bit of a conflict there. In the updated beach management plan that we've submitted to the DEP, we have presented these types of management techniques, framed it in a way that the purpose is to protect, maintain the shorebird nesting habitat. There's no, you know, there's not the creating the winter berm proposed. We know that's an issue with DEP. That's going to be a non-starter with DEP. But we've also, and we understand that they don't want to see the vegetation management like with the backblading, but we think with experienced operators who understand what they're doing and not, you know, not grading it, the berm, and just really resting the blade on the surface, not really digging it in, but just to back drag it to expose the sand and cut back the above-grade vegetation, leaving the roots in place so as the summer goes on, that the vegetation can come in. But you get woody vegetation in there too, such as sumac and tree of heaven and things like that. So that needs to be taken care of. So those are the elements for the shorebird nesting, really trying to maintain what the town has been doing, but modified it a little bit. One of the items that we did include there was not to create the berm, but to, the seawall provides a barrier for chick movement once they're running around. You know, right now, when I was out there a couple of weeks ago measuring it, I'm calling it the reveal, so the height of the wall above the beach. There's 4 to 5 feet, generally between the northern stairs to the taps. And so what we've identified was when the sand builds up to the top of the wall, you know, to be less than 2 feet, then it can be pulled down and just spread the sand out evenly, directly seaward where it's being removed, so that it's spread out in a thin manner over a pretty wide extent of the beach, so it doesn't really change the beach form. It's not contributing to the loss of beach volume because it's keeping that material on the beach, but it's providing a barrier for the chicks so that they don't, you know, get out onto the street and things like that. And then, in terms of storm damage management, rather than creating the berm and pulling it out, what's proposed are 8 low sacrificial dunes. So those would be created with importing sand that's similar to the sand fraction of the sediment on the beach, and then vegetating those with beach grass. And the idea of those is to be about 3 feet high, 80 feet long, and 30 feet wide, set 25 feet off the wall, and just placing those along the beach. That way we get that interruption of the storm waves so that we maintain that storm damage prevention and flood control function. We're not losing volume of sand on the beach. And we're trying to keep that wave action and storm action down on the beach and to prevent the material from, ramping up. So the maintaining a reveal does two things. One is it provides a barrier for the chicks, but it also keeps that reveal there to maintain some of that sediment on the beach during the storms. What we wrote up is, one of the issues with just allowing the sediment to build up and have it come up and ramp to the top of the seawall, as I think DEP would not mind seeing, is that you have that ramp, ramping action. Then as you have the winter storms, the nor'easters, the sediment gets washed up over the wall, onto the streets, into the yards. The town needs to clean it out of the, out of the street, out of the storm drain system. It has debris in it, trash, if it's coming out of the storm drain system, there's potential that, you just have oil, grease, gas, things like that. So that material cannot be put back onto the beach. That has to be hauled off and disposed of. So that's actually a loss of sediment from the littoral drift system. So there's a benefit of keeping that revealed. It's not going to prevent sediment from being washed over during nor'easters, but it will minimize that, trying to minimize the amount of sediment that's lost in the littoral drift system. So those are the highlights of the beach management plan. We have not received comments from DEP. As Tony mentioned, it's a bit of a negotiation right now. We received their comments on the initial draft. We prepared this revised plan that addressed some of their comments and is still identifying some actions that the town would like to see that we think makes a pragmatic approach of managing the beach. And one of the things that the regulations don't really tease out is the difference between a fully naturalized beach, dune, barrier beach system. Think of the dunes down in Truro or P-Town versus the cobble dune that we have here with the seawall. So, areas like the southern portion of Plum Island, Truro is regulated the same as Euro Beach and Revere Beach and Nantasket Beach, which all have seawalls, roads, utilities. And so it's always in an area like this trying to come to a pragmatic compromise for an altered system like this where we still want to protect the built environment, but also want to protect the interests of the resource owners.
All right, thanks, Dwight. A couple of other just quick things. I know when we had some people come out on the beach a few weeks ago, there was some, I know people like volleyball courts and there was some digging out of that. The volleyball courts are allowed. That wasn't the issue with the volleyball courts, so I want to clarify that. What the issue was is obviously it was in the nesting area of the birds, so when you dig it out, it created a small lip.
Was not,
Which, well, the person went out that, kind of raked out the edges, so.
was not,
What's that?
wasn't in there at all.
Oh, well, you have to be the 200 feet out from the nesting area.
200 yards.
200 yards, yeah.
There
So
wasn't anybody there.
it's, which is like 900, yeah. So, anyway, well, regardless, it was that one corner anyway, but you just have to make sure when we do it, we just don't have a lip on it. So, we can use the beach and, the beach is great, but we have to make sure that during this time frame when the birds are out there, that we just keep the, if we create the volleyball court, just make it so it's just a little smoother lip so it doesn't create a little curve. So if the birds do get over there, they don't fall in and can't get out. That was what the concern was. Nobody wants to stop falling. You can get upset about it, but that's our reality, so.
That's nature, that's nature.
Understandable, but during the nesting in the area, the state has specific guidelines and, we want to try to remember, there's a whole town out there, we try to avoid fines so we don't have to pay them for the whole town. So, with that, I'll certainly open it to questions and comments and we'll go from there.
First question. My name is Jen Sanford, I live down on the beach.
Sure.
The question, can you just clarify the 2 feet? I don't know if I'm confused. The plan is to only make the seawall 2 feet?
No, right now, there's, 4 to 5 feet, 4 to 5.5 feet or so.
Or 7 to 8 as you go further down?
Yeah, depending on, I didn't go all the way down with the measurements, I was looking more in the area that we're proposing
Okay.
the dunes.
Yes,
sorry,
that's
the
what
dunes.
you were.
Yeah.
And the intent there is to let, as DEP would like to see, is just let nature take its course. of the beach and the dunes shifting, and just to allow that to occur, when the dunes when the sediment builds up to within 2 feet of the top, then it can be dug out and spread out
So
onto
the
the
part
beach.
that was completely missed, what about the homes? You talked about protecting the birds and the chicks can run along the walls. What about the homes? What about stopping the waves that come over those walls and you
That's-
said nor'easters? That wasn't mentioned in your conversation at all, so I'm confused about that.
And what we're trying, as I said, what we're trying to do is balance the fact that DEP issued the enforcement order because of primarily because of the berm that's been created on an annual basis for the winter, and digging that out and putting it out onto the beach. So what we're trying to do is balance the ability of the town to remove some of that sediment to maintain some of a reveal, as opposed to digging it out as deep as the town used to, so that there's still a reveal, so that there's still some vertical buffer for the wave action, as opposed to allowing the sediment to build up completely to the top of the sea.
Because the seawall was built to protect the homes, not for the birds to run alongside it. Okay. What it also does, by I know, I
keeping
feel like our
it,
houses there's more talk about birds than protecting our homes. And that's the part that I'm having a little issue with.
and that's what the interest of the act, storm damage prevention and flood control.
And all of us that
is
play
well
flood
established.
insurance.
So, storm damage prevention is to prevent storm damage to public and private property, and flood controls to control flood.
2 feet is not going to protect any homes.
And I'm not going to disagree with you on the height of the seawall review, but if the desire of DEP is to just allow the beach form to continue to evolve without any changes to it, without any management of it. I happen to live just a few blocks from a beach that I go to, that I've lived there for 35 years, and it has a seawall, it's a barrier beach, and the kids used to dare each other when they were they're grown kids now, they were little, dare each other to jump off the wall onto the beach. Now, the sediment is right up to the top of the seawall of the beach that I go to. That's right near me. And that's what the DEP does not have a problem with that. And what happens is the waves come up, the material comes up, the rocks and everything comes over, and the town has to then essentially plow the roads with front-end loaders after these storms because of the ramps. So what we're trying to do is get that balance of keeping some of the reveal, and getting it, when we talked about a reveal in general with DEP, they wanted some more specifics. So
But
we've
the thing
added
you just
some-
said, sorry to interrupt you, but the sand that you said that comes up at York Beach goes onto roads. At Euro Beach, this said comes up on her house and
Well,
my house and her house and her house.
Right.
It doesn't come up on a road. No one's gonna come in and plow it off our
Well,
backyards.
on Hummerock Beach, it also comes up onto the beaches,
Yes.
onto there's houses right along the beach, so it comes onto them, but also the roads that go perpendicular to the beach. It needs to be taken care of. But what I'm getting at is we're trying to balance those interests. If the DEP has already issued the enforcement order for the action, for the traditional management of the town's form. So if we don't try to strike a balance with them, the go-to by the DEP will be a ramp up to the top of the seawall.
Which is we're pushing back on. So to exactly your point, we want to create the seawall, which is why we want to put those dunes in too, because that breaks the wave action, right? So we want to create those dunes to do that, to do exactly what you're talking about, is to protect the homes, protect the roadway. That's why we're pushing back, so.
So I want to add just 1 second. The whole entire goal of the Wetlands Protection Act on a barrier beach with a private coastal zone is to protect from storm damage and storm prevention. So what the state wants us to do actually is going to protect your homes and from flood insurance and to meet or exceed FEMA regulations, state building code regulations, and the Wetland Protection Act. I promise you, if you do the research, you will see what I'm talking about. It takes a little understanding, but I promise you, it's in the best interest of your homes, 100%, I promise you. There are also, and if you are concerned about, top of Wyman Street, if you walk up Wyman Street to the right, the 2 homes, they've done an amazing, amazing job vegetating their dunes, and you can see they have completely protected their homes from a coastal storm. The sediment is probably at least an elevation of 2 to 3 feet higher than their backyards, and it's completely vegetated with sandgrass, and that sandgrass, the roots go 7 feet deep, so you're not losing that sediment. Just even the biggest, well, maybe not against the northeasterner, but the 7 feet deep, that beach grass goes, that's a lot of protection to hold that bank in place and that dune in place. So just consider that. And we need to do everything we can to abide by the Wetlands Protection Act so that the state doesn't supersede our order of what we want to do, because even when the speech management plan becomes approved by, well, not approved, but accepted by DEP, it has to come to conservation. We have to issue an order of conditions. If our order doesn't meet the performance standards of the Wetlands Protection Act, they're going to supersede it, and they're going to have control of the entire beach. And we're not going to have any say. We're not going to be able to go out there and rake. We're not going to be able to do anything. So it's very, very important that we do what we have to do and meet in the middle and come to an agreement and protect everything that has to be protected. But ultimately, the bottom line is that the protection is all about the storm damage and storm prevention. Nobody wants to see Point Shirley be washed away or anyone's homes be washed away by any means. So just have faith in that, and that's all I want to say.
I have a question. Isn't the sand supposed to be 10 feet, like the wall, the sea? Because I remember being a kid and having it be a long, so why are we talking about 2 feet and 4 feet? Why aren't we talking about the 10 feet?
That may have been the condition where it was built.
Yeah.
The beach has evolved, changes over time as sediment moves in, moves out. You have the winter beach, the summer beach profiles. You have the storms that bring material in, you have the storms that wash material away. Over the 60, 70 years, it has built up.
Okay, so why can't we go back to the 10 feet?
Because that is a natural process that occurs along the beach, and so with the interest of the act, we can't just say we'll go back to 1950 when it was built, because the shore may have been completely different than it is now. So we need to deal with the way that it is now and try to manage it for the current conditions, and not, there isn't the ability to restore it to the way it was 50, 60 years ago.
So you're saying you want 4 feet? 4 feet, right? Two, I'm sorry.
2 feet, they'll drag it out to 4 to 5.
Correct.
Correct.
You'll drag it out every single time we have a storm?
No, it's when the sediment builds up to within 2 feet of the top of the seawall. And that way, it won't necessarily be every year. It'll be, if it's every year, it's every year. I mean, right now, this spring, it's still 4 or 5 feet below the top of the seawall.
Is there a certain section of the beach? that
One at a time, folks, please,
stand up?
let's keep the target record, and we got everybody talking at the same time.
Is there just a certain section of the beach that would be maintained at that 4 to 5 feet? From...
It would generally be from the northern stairs south to the dunes, where the dunes are down by Mike.
So it would just be the other end, your end, what they're saying, right, down that end?
Well, the public stairs, what public stairs are we talking about?
Handicap access.
That main entrance, all the way down to...
Essentially, the main entrance of the beach down to what?
So where you do the berm now? Where you...
Down to the end of the berm.
Can you say by the street names?
There's a question over here, go ahead.
Could you please say by the street names? I don't know all the street names, so I'm not sure what areas you're talking about. I live on Otis Street, and no one takes care of my stairs.
It's strawberry floor.
I don't know what to say. Are those public stairs or private stairs?
It's a street. I don't know, it's a street, they don't get fixed.
Yeah, I don't, but is that public access to the beach or is that private access?
No idea.
Yeah, I think it's private. Is it, I know what you're saying.
All right, is there any other, I just don't want to let out background noise, it's hard recording, this is great.
Quick question. I live in the Highlands, my name's Seth Williams. I used to live on Pebble Ave, for what it's worth. You mentioned the sacrificial dues. I'm curious what the cost of something like that is versus fines. Not that I know we can chase, like just pay the fines and do what we do. because that probably wouldn't go over well long-term.
Well, we end up losing control.
Yeah, right, that's what it sounds like. So I'm curious in that, and then how do those sacrificial dunes differ from anything that you see kind of in the news with some of these private residents that have done, where they've done, I think it was down on the South Shore, they've done $400,000 or $500,000 in sand and washed away in one storm, so I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, well, a couple of things. I'd have to run the pricing. I haven't run the pricing. It's probably about $55 a cubic yard to purchase and place the sand. So I think I did the math. I gotta go back into the report. I don't know the total cubic yardage off the top of my head. But the intent here is to have, again, DEP suggested a continuous dune ridge along the whole beach that's planted. If we do that, we know that people are gonna wanna walk across the dune to get to the beach, you know, from roads, from houses. So the idea is to have these discrete sacrificial dune mounds. They're more mounds than a complete ridge, so that there's pretty wide space in between them, about 50 feet, so that there's good pathways for people to get to the beach without, crossing the dunes, and then, because when you have those pedestrian access desire pathways across the dunes, that weakens the vegetation, weakens the dunes. So the idea is to make those by having that spacing. So that's the intent there. We can work up a draft price for the town. And the idea is that those would also be vegetated, because, you were saying that the vegetation can grow pretty deep over time. With only 3 feet, the idea is that the vegetation gets down beneath the sacrificial dune into the native sediments.
Excuse me.
The back.
Wait, I just want to complete one of his questions here on Salisbury Beach. I happen to know the folks that are doing that planning and doing that work. They actually had been preparing for a large dune cluster, a dune nourishment, beach nourishment project before these last winter storms took effect. And so after these storms, they basically did dump a bunch of sand out there without a lot of planning because it was an emergency response. It was actually a pretty low level. When you think about the length of the beach, the width of the beach, and the amount of sand that went out there, it's pretty minimal. And with that, then there were some more storms that came in and washed that away. But that is what the dunes and the beaches do, is that the sand absorbs the wave energy. And if it gets washed away, but it absorbs the wave energy to help prevent it from continuing further up the beach, and it knocks out the energy, so it's not as powerful waves. And so the storms that were subsequent that washed away that material actually did its job. It's just that that's what dunes do. Again, on the South Shore, they just completed the Duxbury Beach Dune Nourishment Project. I think it was 700,000 cubic yards of material, raising the dune quite high. And again, that's a barrier beach. And that's a lot of sediment. That's not the first time they've done it on that beach, because it's a sacrificial dune. That material gets washed out over time, and that's how dunes and beaches work, by absorbing the energy and helping to dissipate that storm energy, as opposed to not having that there. The issue with the seawall, just to let you know, that as humans, we've built seawalls. They're good, they protect the landward properties. However, when waves hit seawalls, they hit with the energy against the seawall. In physics, opposite equal and opposite, energy or reaction. So that means that energy gets reflected off the seawall and back into the substrate that's in front of it, and it causes erosion in front of the seawall. And at the ends of seawalls, it's called refraction, so that energy gets washed around and causes erosion where the seawall ends. So seawalls are good, but in a high energy environment, wave environment, they cause more erosion and damage over time than not having them there. So you know, and I'm not saying that the seawall is a bad thing, it's there, it's going to remain, but the fact is then managing the beach in front of it so that it still serves its function, but still allows the beach and the community to serve.
Excuse me, the man, the chair, the wheelchair has been, had his hand up for 5 minutes.
All right, just a question. What's the responsibility, if any, of the Army Corps of Engineers? Perhaps like on the other side of Shore Drive where they have permanent berms in the middle of the ocean that don't get washed away, but they do cut down the wave activity as it's coming in. Is there any possibility in our little area over here to have the same thing done? Are there government funds for that? I mean, we're talking about doing this every single year where you put a berm up and then the berm gets washed away. Well, I'm sure that's great, but just to put one solid berm in the middle of the you know, the peninsula over there, that might be a little bit more advantageous to us all. But are there funds for it?
So, sir, I appreciate your comment. In front of me, I do have a case study from Winthrop Shore Drive when they did the Army Corps of Engineer project. Just to give you kind of a key components of it. Phase 1 was 2013, Phase 2 was 2014. It was a 12-year permitting process with the Army Corps of Engineering. So 12 years of permitting and going back and forth to make that happen. So in 2013, they started it, Phase 1, 2014. The total cost at that time, in 2013, the permitting was $2 million and then $22 million for the material. And we do see that cobble berm and that additional jetty that was put in closer to the green bars miraculously has made a major improvement to the storm damage to Winthrop Shore Drive.
And it's permanent.
It's permanent. And that is something we can look at, but just know it would not be an instantaneous fix that, you know, we're talking a minimum of a decade till you would even be able to find the material in the permitting process is astronomical amount of time, just so you know.
Yeah, but there might be government funds for it.
That is from the state. Yeah.
Those have been there.
That isn't what I'm referring to. Probably,
He's talking about the 5 sisters.
he is, but I'm
We're
letting,
talking about the 5
well, the
sisters.
5 sisters would have gone through the same permitting when they were done, and it would have probably taken just as much time. To go through the Army Corps of Engineering, it's at least a decade worth of permitting time, is what I'm saying.
But one could argue that this beach plan is going to be at least a decade as well. Like, you're not gonna plant grass in one,
You can plant grass in
one
season.
season, the roots are gonna be 7 feet.
No, but they
One
come,
can argue this is.
the roots come about a foot. They grow to about 3 feet in one season.
And then they get washed away in one storm.
Well, that's your opinion, honestly. Why don't you give it a try and see what happens? That's
We
all.
live here.
Thank you. I'm sorry. Give it a try and see what happens.
We live here and we see it every season.
But what are you doing to prevent the flooding in your yard? What are you doing is all I'm asking.
You're being confrontational. All right,
Thank you.
there you go. The question in front of you.
Yeah, I'm Norm Hyatt. I was chairman of the Conservation Commission when they did the front beach. And after the permitting and all that happened, I supervised the project. First of all, that was a DCR project. Rural Beach is not DCR. It cost $32 million to do the front beach. And everybody complained when they put the rocks down on top of the sand. It's only the rocks that have saved that beach. If it were all sand, it would have been out there by now. I live on Shore Drive right across from the new berm that we're building. It's great, but to get it permitted today is going to be impossible. First of all, coastal zone management has its own ideas of what should be done. DEP has its own ideas of what should be done. All these agencies have different conflicting ideas. And another solution you might want to think about that is natural solutions, which is berms that are permanent out there floating. And what they do is they, distract the wave action as the storms come in. So they're anchored down, but they're natural environmental things that they create. That's one way of doing this. They're not going to let you build, I'll tell you right now, they're not going to let you build a berm like the 5 Sisters in today's environment. It's not going to do
You know the cost of those floating berms?
I don't know what they cost. I haven't done that much research into them. They're relatively new, but there were places in the South Carolina area, North Carolina area that used them and it seemed to be really successful. So it's something to consider. You have to get a grant for those. They're very expensive as well, but it's something to consider. But if you're thinking about hard solutions like what's happening on Front Beach, it's a very different environment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jack?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr. Manager, thank you very much for letting me speak here. Long time with the resident, lived at Point Shirley at different times in my life, since I was 3 years old. I don't think there's any natural occurrence on any part of the coastline of Winthrop. Everything is man-made, especially along the coastline, the north coastline of Deer Island. They built a 20-foot seawall there with granite revetment, and they filled in the tide land. Nothing natural about that. So when we're talking about natural occurrences, it doesn't occur here in Winthrop. Like I said, Mass Water Resource filled in the tide land, so now they have about a couple hundred yards, or maybe 500 yards of tide land that was filled in. Well, the water has to go someplace else. It can't go there anymore. It's not natural. Mass Water Resource had a memorandum of understanding, a memorandum of agreement to do a topographical study every year and submit it to the town. I've asked this question many times at town council meetings. Where are those studies? We're supposed to submit them. We don't have one. I was told you can look it up, and then the memorandum was taken out of the agreements with the town of Winthrop for some reason about 10 years ago. So it's nothing natural happening here. Everything is man-made. The water has to go someplace. The water is directed right to the homes on Yarrow Beach. No question about it. It's higher down the south end. Now it's higher down the north end with the spit off of the water tower going into the ocean, causing a funnel effect. We have to make sure that we get the agreement exposed so everybody can understand what's going to happen during a northeaster or a hurricane coming up. Projected, there's 27 hurricanes directed towards our eastern seaboard. We have to do something right away to remedy this problem. The berm worked, no question about it. The wall works when it's exposed. The tide would hit the wall and run down, I forget what street it was, down the end of Shirley Street and go into the bay. So I hope we get the Mass Water Resource involved in this discussion. No one's mentioned it here in this room tonight. Has to be done. They have to correct the problem that they've made. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
you, Jerry.
Any other questions? Sorry, ma'am.
The sacrificial berms that you're speaking about, is that the plan that you're putting in, or is it one of the options? And that's my first question. And then my second question is, do you also have a plan in place to maintain these sacrificial berms? Because sacrificial means that they're eventually going to wash away. And if you vegetate them and then they wash away, and then all the vegetation is now spread over the beach, then we have zero beach, because now all of the vegetation is washed all over the place, and now it's just vegetation and not an actual sandy beach for humans to use. So does the DPW or whoever it is have a plan in order to maintain, will we be able to have any type of seaweed raking or management of sand or between berms? What's the follow-up to the creation of these sacrificial berms?
So, in meeting with Tom Ferrick on another matter, but I did walk out on the beach with him to discuss the conditions of Yarrow Beach. We talked about the best management practices. So once we get the beach management plan approved, moving forward, there'll be best management practices in place for that, so that we will be able to go out there with there's a storm, we need to go out there with a piece of equipment, there's, people's floats, up on the beach, we need Steve's crew to go out there. We will have best management practices in place so that they do it, to abide by, what the state wants and no damage to the dunes, and also best management practices for maintaining the dunes. So that might mean bringing in additional beach nourishment regularly, It might need, additional plantings, but there'll be best management plans. We will have to have a beach monitor, and we will have to monitor the project, and we'll have to keep it up to speed to what it's supposed to be. So that will be in place. That will be in the order of conditions from Conservation Commission, or superseding orders from the state, and that will have to be reviewed every 3 years.
It feels like it could spiral very quickly into like, oh, well,
And I don't think,
vegetation, we can't
and I
have
don't
heavy
think it's
equipment
gonna
on
be
it.
allowed to
So,
spiral. I'm
sorry.
confident it's not gonna, I totally understand what you're saying. We would have to revisit with the monitoring plan, which is in addition to the nourishment plan. It's going to have to be monitored every season.
And just, the intent there was to get these mounds installed, planted, the fencing, the snow fencing around them to protect them during the 2-year growing period. Then the fencing could be removed, and then it would be maintained, similar to what's being maintained now, to do the beach raking and whatnot, to keep the beach as a beach and to keep those mounds, vegetation, and pretty much in place for them.
We had a question.
So you challenged this young lady over here to do it herself? Or
No, just to see, give it a
What-
try,
what-
that's
what-
all. That's all.
What would that guidance be? 'Cause
Well, that
I'd
guidance
love
would
to
be,
go up there and do something.
so on Wyman, like
You know,
I mentioned,
really?
I totally understand where you come from.
Yeah.
And I
What can I do?
apologize for my shortness, but what I'm saying is, earlier I said, it's gonna take all of us, it really is. And if you look at the top of Wyman Street, you go to the top of Wyman, 2 houses to the right, they have vegetated dunes, they're not going anywhere.
On the beach?
On the beach, yes.
But that
But
wasn't
that
done
protection,
privately. You need to make that point clear.
Yeah.
That wasn't done privately. That
it wasn't,
No, so the residents aren't going
They
out
aren't.
and, no.
no.
Those were planted by
There was, okay, all right, well, whoever did the work, it's amazing, the work.
As a pilot.
As a pilot program. That pilot, so,
You don't make.
and I didn't know Steve did that.
Seems like it goes
So
slow.
just, hold on,
Hold on.
that's an amazing project,
Go ahead,
a pilot project.
That was a
because it works.
pilot program. It does work.
Yes.
You're right. It's, the scope that Dwight Doug is referring to is, I think beyond that scope, it's a large scope. And
It
that's
is.
questions that I have. So I just want to set some expectations here a little bit. The rocks on the beach, the cobbles that are on the beach, those aren't going to be removed. We're going to be dealing with cobbles on the beach. I know a lot of people want to envision this beach as a Revere Beach or a Daytona Beach with this nice blanket of sand. That's not the case. That's not gonna happen. This planted dune will work. It will mimic what we were doing with the large dune, which did work. DEP has said, put a kibosh on that, no more. That's why we are where we are right now. But this isn't a DPW project that is going to create and plant this dune. This is something that's going to have to be, it'll be put in place. We'll have to figure out the permitting on that. And I don't know what that permitting process is. Then the maintenance plan will fall on DPW, and we'll go out there and we'll maintain how they allow us to maintain. And we'll keep up right now, as the manager said. We're hoping to get out there in the short term to get some of the debris out of there and hand pick, some of the trash and do our best with the seaweed. They're not letting us put that surf rig that you used to see us towing behind the tractor. That's also not being allowed at the moment. We have to see some system. I don't know if we ever get to that point within the areas that we can maintain, we can get back on the beach.
Yeah, I don't know about the rack line being removed.
So I just want to set some expectations. It's not going to be DPW, building these berms. This is going to be a permanent process, and we'll maintain them once they're in place. The stuff that gets washed over into people's yards, again, that's not a DPW function. We're not going into private property to remove things. So just want to set some expectations. That's all.
Ma'am in the back there, sorry.
Okay, I've been here 65 years, and I hate to admit it. This is not my mother's beach anymore. I like the phrase that was just used. It would be awful to think of Yarrow Beach as Zero Beach. 5 years ago, Yarrow Beach was listed in a AAA magazine as one of the 5 best beaches. And I feel like we've just gone way down here. And what does it mean for my grandchildren that look forward to coming to the beach, 4th of July, and all of us that enjoy that space? So I think we need to act now. Thank you.
She said years ago, you went to the beach and it was sandy. They did all that work on Winter Beach, yes, with all those rocks, and all those rocks, it came onto Euro Beach. So who's kind of responsible for that? I realize, there's two sides to the story, but who's responsible for all that work? Did anyone say, well, we're going to fix this beach up at the price of that beach? So, because that beach was a sandy beach.
So, I
And
know.
that's artificially
I
put
agree.
on there, which you were saying you're not supposed to do, but it was artificially put on, because it was all sandy 5 years ago, but little by little, all the rocks.
Morphing.
from-
Yes, it is
like-
morphing.
Like, if they, if they could put all of those rocks in like a gabion or something, like they do in other countries, to keep them from moving, we wouldn't be having this problem, the rocks on Winter Beach would still be where they put them. The rocks on Winter Beach have moved as well.
So they have
And
migrated.
they're not as protected.
Right.
So there's a lot of problems here, and it's just, we all just really want a solution and to get the right people to fix these things. Because we love that beach, and
Of course.
to see it ruined like this, and then to be saying that all of this stuff that's been thrown on it because of what happened at Winter Beach, we can't do anything about, but yet we have to be so careful of these birds, which we want to be, but we also want to, we also want to have a nice life here living in Winthrop with a nice beach.
So the bird sanctuary is really a federal, it's a different program, and it really, DEP kind of put, they kind of tiptoe around it also. They're not, this is, what we're dealing with right now is DEP and the primary frontal dune and the protection of it. It really is the storm barrier, and I understand where you're coming from. I do. I see what you're saying, and the lagoon that appeared out of nowhere that never was there, and now it's closed in, and it doesn't ebb and flow, and what you can do. And that's something, that during the permitting process, I don't know if we can go to the Army Corps of Engineers and look into some.
Yeah, just a couple points. The gentleman in the back said.
Thank you.
Wait, just let me, that the
You've
whole
spoken a long
shore-
time, sir.
that the whole
One second, Jack.
shoreline-
Jack, 1 second.
That the whole shoreline is been altered, so it's not a natural shoreline anymore. So we know that. And as the former chairman said, CZM has their approach to things, DEP has theirs, Natural Heritage has theirs. So what we're trying to do is, CZM typically looks at things as if they're completely natural shorelines, but it's a man-made shoreline. So we're trying to develop a pragmatic approach that balances this man-made landform with the idea that it's going to be managed as natural and to allow nature to just do its thing. So we're trying to develop a plan that balances those things, to thread that needle together.
Thank you.
1 second.
Thank you,
They do.
Mr.
They
Manager.
really do.
Thank you, Mr. Manager, for
ahead, Jack.
calling me attention, appreciate it. Steve Calla mentioned the cobble, correct. The people up here are talking about the rocks. The cobble gets pushed up from the ocean floor. It's not migrating from Front Beach to the end of, the south end of Yarrow Beach. So there's a big misunderstanding there. I'd like to have somebody correct it. The gentleman here could correct it. That's where the cobble comes from. The cobble is built up on the south end of Yarrow Beach, probably about 20 feet higher than what it was 20 years ago. So the cobble comes from the ocean floor. Many studies have proved it. I hope everybody understands it now. Thank you.
And as the gentleman was saying, the seawall, the cobbles and the sand and the rocks being moved during storms. As I was saying, the seawall interrupts the natural process, so that the rocks and the cobble settle out. The sand stays in suspension, gets washed over, gets washed back in. It doesn't always sit with the rocks. So over time, that's why you see this beach become rockier. Once you interrupt that system. But the system is there, it's interrupted, and we just need to figure out how to manage it so that we can balance the natural resources, the recreational interests, and the bird interests. So that's what we're trying to
I have a
do.
question over here, the woman in the back.
So obviously the topic of the seawall is here, it's here for good, the beach wall is not going away. However, has there been any discussion in this conversation about maintenance of it? Because right in front of my house, it looks like it's gonna, some kids, or I mean, my kids walk on that beach 10,000 times in the summer, and someone's gonna step and it's gonna crumble off and there's gonna be some serious issues.
And
So-
we have an element in the beach management plan to allow maintenance of the seawall as needed, so that we don't have to go back all the time to do that.
And to be clear, this is the beach management plan we're doing now to get out of this administrative consent order and to, get DEP and sort of the happy place, right? But we're also gonna look at all the things that, this gentleman spoke of. I mean, Chief Delahanty brought me something that a woman from, a student from MIT did. That's a roller that they put in the water, and that sort of minimized, takes the wave action out as well. So there are other things out there, and we wanna look at them, but we wanna be able to, and some of these pilot programs are great because there is grant funding for them. So we're always looking to things that we can alter this so we can do what we can to minimize that wave action, minimize the rocks coming up on the beach. So this is just the start, so I want to, my goal is to, protect the houses, protect the roadway, and keep the beach. That's the long-term plan, and to avoid fines and, wasting all of the taxpayers' money. So that's, I'm very conservative on that stuff. So that's the goal and that's the end game here. So I'm sorry.
So just a question, so just going forward, this is all going to happen, but for this summer,
Yep.
the rocks are staying, the dip to the water is staying, like the old people are not making it to the water because of and I don't mean that disrespectfully. But I wasn't talking about you. My mother and aunts are not making it to the water because when you go, there's a drop and they can't get back up.
So we're talking from the handicap access?
No, that's just the beach.
Yeah.
If you go to the beach right now, and
Yeah.
you try to go to the water, you can't get there without going down a very rocky dip.
Yep.
And then, as an older person, you cannot get the hump to get back up unless someone's helping you. So for the summer of '24, that's what we're
Well,
getting.
we haven't finalized our DEP, so knowing that, we'll see if we can get something in place and maybe we can make an accessible walkway.
What is the next critical date? I've heard a lot of back and forth about the DEP and that they haven't responded. I'd really like to know, what is the next critical date to address this woman's comments, Jen's comments? Is this just going to be like this for the rest of the summer and beyond? I mean, do they just have, is there any deadline?
The deadline was 5/31.
From 5/31, it's now June 8th, but what's the next?
We're waiting to
step?
hear back from DEP.
How long do you wait? Do they get a deadline?
I've 6 emails and 4 phone calls in the last
But how is
2 days.
that acceptable to just not answer? That
I
would be
can lean
acceptable
on,
at
the next
worst.
step will be, I'll call the governor and our state reps to put some pressure on it.
So, and you can feel free to contact them.
Yeah, contact DEP
You can
yourself.
contact them and make these demands on them.
I'm happy to do that. To
Yes.
answer your question earlier about what we are doing up in
Yes.
front of our place,
Yep.
we're paying exorbitant taxes and flood insurance.
Yep.
And picking up trash and picking up litter.
Absolutely.
So we are doing our part.
Of course you are, and no one's questioning that. But I just, one thing, clearly we have a conflict, we all have the common goal, that we want a beautiful beach, we want to protect from flooding on Point Shirley. We're all in agreement with that. The conflict is how we get approval from DEP. And so that's what I was saying, it is going to take all of us to kind of come together and meet in the middle, because nobody's going to be happy with what the results are.
But isn't your job to respond to DEP? We can communicate with them, but you
So-
guys are the ones that have the authority
So,
to
I'm not in any
communicate with them.
response.
And we are, ma'am, we are in constant
But
contact.
what is the next
I said,
date?
next step, we have to wait to get their comments back. They just got the plan on 5/31. I haven't seen them do
That's
anything
not,
in less
that's not
than,
acceptable.
well, you think so, the DEP, I haven't got anything back from them in less than 3 weeks. I mean, so we're not at that window yet, so I'm hoping to see something soon. But in the meantime, I've been hounding them so we can do the interim cleanup, and that's what we're trying to get done. So that's why I wanted to get everybody's email address, so as we get these updates and the time frame and the information you want, that we can get it out to everybody.
So to answer the question about the pedestrian walkway though, for elderly or handicapped. And I'm not referring to Mrs. Honan. That is a permittable exception to the dunes, and so maybe myself or Tony,
We can get that.
we can either do an emergency order for that, possibly, but we'll get in touch with Ty with Eric, and we'll see about that.
Just have time
Yeah.
with her, try to walk from the
Yeah, I
landing.
totally understand.
I want him to go waist deep.
I get it.
And then
I get it.
return,
Totally.
and see how it goes.
100%. But that is a permittable exception, the pedestrian walkway. So we'll get onto that, okay?
Sorry, sir.
I can tell you, the walkway, the map that's out there
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
should be redone.
Right.
Because it's just put over those rocks, and if
Right.
you were to try to do any sort of wheelchair or walk down.
Right, you're
the
not
road,
gonna, yeah, Steve and I noticed that the other day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous. It's
And
like, why
maybe we
you-
do a boardwalk, kind of like this on some side of Surfside, something like that for the future. It's above the dune and you're walking over, you're on a boardwalk, kind of like they do down the Cape.
Any other new questions? Anybody else that had a chance to speak? Ma'am?
I just, nobody had told me, if my stairs are a private
Oh,
stairs,
yeah, I know.
so, well, no one told me. Who do I go to see about that? If it's a private,
Follow up with Michael, give me a call on Monday, or just, give me your phone number afterwards, and we'll look into it and find out. I don't know right now, but we'll find out and get back to you.
thank you very much.
You're welcome. Sir?
I studied coastal geology at BU, and everything Duncan has said is quite consistent with what I learned. But one thing we haven't mentioned is a big problem for all of us, is that we are in a regime of sea level rise. These problems are going to get bigger and bigger and more expensive as time goes by. We're not going to go back to a beach the way it used to be. That's not going to happen. It's not possible. We're going to have more wave energy and more waves. The natural form of the beach would be for the beach to roll over into the harbor, creating a marsh, and it would continue to roll over. Prevailing winds in the summer would blow dry sand up and create natural dunes. But that can't happen because we have houses there. So this is a big problem. It's an ongoing, long-term problem, and it's going to be expensive, and it's going to be something that we're going to have to deal with either financially, sociologically, psychologically. These changes are happening regardless of what we do. So that just had to be said. And we're all sorry it was like that. If we had a different world of receding ocean, sea level shrinkage, we would have more and more beach. But it's not going that way. It's coming in. That's.
Thank you.
In the back, sir?
Yeah, I was in Florida over the winter, and they have a big trouble with the wind blowing the sand off the beach onto it's like a broadwalk, it's called. And so, to deter that, they've got these cylindrical tubes that they would fill with sand, lie them on the beach when they knew a storm was coming, or perhaps they could do that here during the winter time. So you're regenerating the sand that's there, and then you just empty it out back in the springtime. And it's probably a recyclable resource that they could take out in the summertime and leave there in the wintertime. It'll keep the sand on the beach and prevent the flooding as well. And you would think that their storms are a little more severe down there than they are up there.
We'll take a look at it. Like I said, all things are on the table. We're not ruling anything out. So. Thank you. Anybody else? All right, please make sure, I'm sorry, go ahead, sir. Well, like I said, we did them so we can have walkways in between them, because we don't want people to walk on, because if you disturb the grass, then, we'll put signs up to try to keep people off. Yeah.
How big were they? What's the size of these eight berms? Can you just give me an example? Size of the.
80 feet high.
80 feet long by 30 feet wide. And
about 3 feet high.
And how much in between?
50 feet.
3 feet high, 20 feet.
Yeah. All right, like I said, anybody that didn't get your name on the sign-in sheet, please do with your email address, so we can, I want to be able to get a Eurobeach email blast out there. Thank you.